and welcome back to the Anthrozoology podcast. Today, we're joined by Altamush Saeed, an interspecies justice lawyer, educator, and non-profit leader. Hello, my name's Sarah, and I'm looking at unconventional shark-human relationships.
I'm Michelle, and my research focuses on pachyderm-human interactions and how the health and welfare of captive individuals impacts that of their wild counterparts.
And I'm Chris, and my research focuses on cats, cat-human relations, and cat cultures.
Welcome back, Altamush. It's lovely to have you with us again. I wanted to ask you a couple of things from two ends of the spectrum. One, is factory farming becoming a big problem, or is it already a big problem in Pakistan, or is it a very important part of the economy, therefore very difficult to challenge? And at the other end of the spectrum, you do so much, you're covering all of these things. I wondered if you had, it must be hard. Oh, well, you've got your little cat Mao that you're very much connected to and her kittens, but there must be some stories from throughout all of your work where you actually remember and connect. You've connected with individual animals. So I wonder if you could give us a. I've taken two ends of the spectrum there. If you could unravel that a little bit and give us some thoughts. Thanks.
Well, I've had a lot of connection with dogs who live, outside our home. They often come and, get food from us. Initially, they're very scared, but in a moment's time, they become friends. And they just, come to you. And in many situations, most of them were connected more to my mom than me, which was really nice. So my mom also supports my work. She doesn't support that I do this for a living, which is another topic, but she does support it. And when it comes to animals, particularly, most of my bond actually has mostly been with dogs outside my home. But given I have five cats, that's pretty much a lot of emotional time. So I sleep with two of them every day. So they give me a lot of support. And one of my cats, whose name is Nattu, which is a Punjabi name, you don't have to say it, it's really hard. He makes a really weird noise. He just keeps shouting. His lyrics or his vocal cords will, start dying down, but he will never stop talking. He has that personality. And I love that about him. My dad gets really angry, but he said, I just say, what can I do? So he has that personality. And one of my other cats, which is a white cat, has a few black spots. His name is Maju, which is another Punjabi name. I'm actually scared of him. So sometimes he gets really angry and he would hit you. So I avoid him in those situations. So most of my interaction was them, and I've seen that every single of those, like, these five cats, everyone has a different personality, and it's amazing to know each of them. And the dogs have been the same as well. But that's my major interaction. But I've been to the zoo a couple times, and I always feel for those animals whenever I see them. And as a test exercise, I do some trainings with some students in some form of fellowships, and I take them to the zoos as well to have them see. And many times they are not able to see it because it's just so much hardwired that it's a fun place to have fun. But I'm hoping one day they will see, that the animals are not happy in that situation.
You make me think of Abu Huraira and his
Yes.
love of cats, and obviously with the Prophet Muhammad cutting off his sleeve of his coat, so he did.
Yes.
Yeah. So is that something that you talk about with the children and things like that?
Yeah, I do that actually. So these stories of the Prophet, which are called hadiths in the Islamic religion, there are quite many actually, even more than this. We do share them, and this one I actually have shared quite a bit because it's just so cute. But yes, the cat's sleep is also really important. So that's what he did. So yes, stories. Actually, storytelling is the best form of teaching anybody, literally anybody.
Yes, it's definitely something we remember, isn't it? If something's told in the form of a story, for sure.
Yes.
Maybe you've got some stories for us about your work with the disaster relief, and I'm guessing you've been there on the ground and been in some difficult situations. between animals and humans. Have you got any things that you can bring to mind and we can remember about you?
I mean, most of the stories are actually sad in that
Okay.
space, so I try to forget them because, I mean, even to convince the people, because we don't own the animals, the farm animals, we have to, skip a lot of things when we speak to the farmers that, about what will happen to the animals afterwards. We have to skip that conversation entirely, and we have to say to them, this is your livelihood and it would die, so bring it to our shelter space and we'll treat them for you, despite knowing that where they're going to end up. So that's why I try to avoid that, because it creates a lot of trauma in my head. But very recently I've come to realize that I'm trying to combine two different problems. I'm trying to help animals in disasters, and the other problem is actually a factory farming problem, and it has to be dealt differently. So I shouldn't blame myself for that. But these conversations are really, really hard for me. Even in my own team, uh, I mean, I'm the one pushing for animal rights stuff. So sometimes putting those emotions aside is really, really hard, and I get them, but it's always hard, and it will always be hard the next time as well. So we try.
So how do you challenge the factory farming system then? Is that through a legal means or through social pressure or what?
I mean, it's a bit of both. So, the first conference that we had this year, we had a lot of panels on food systems. We had a specific speaker from Turkey who spoke about veganism and factory farming in a very detailed presentation. That made a lot of difference. It was done very strategically because I felt that if there was an international voice, people might listen, and a lot of them did. One of the judges actually said that he was so happy to see that the food was plant-based at the conference. I mean, having plant-based food at an animal rights conference was, I mean, of course, I couldn't do it that way, but a lot of people were really angry. Like, where's my milk? Where is my this and that? And I had to just say that if the only way to avoid that conversation was, I said that we were talking about animals, let's not eat them for 2 days. That's it. I didn't go into any detail. And in our advocacy workshops, which is basically a fellowship that I designed a couple months back, when I was actually just finished my fellowship with New Roots Institute. If you know about them, they're a fantastic nonprofit in the US that are trying to educate students mostly on food systems and why we need to transform them from quite a few different perspectives. So we directly teach them to students, but of course, we almost always start with cats and dogs because that's what they relate with. But then we, jump the gun forward and help them understand. On the legal side of things, yes, I think that's the easiest way, at least because I know how to do it. But we are working on arguments that connect food systems with disasters, particularly and climate change, which is kind of like my major research. And I'm trying to equate that to human loss, which is now very evident. I'm trying to equate that to disease prevention as well. And I also want to slip in about animal sentience as well, but I will not, particularly talk about the slaughter part of things there, because I believe that way the judges might not, listen to my case. So it's in an environmental lens framing, and what I want from the judge or the court is that there should be a policy that encourages plant-based food systems. So that's what I'm working at right now, and simultaneously. I'm working on another petition that includes animals in our Disaster Management Act. So the government is bound to create programs or projects where animals are rescued from actively from disasters as well. And simultaneous efforts are also happening for animal rights legally for different kind of animals like cats and dogs that we recently won, and now we're trying to get it implemented. But of course, there are some broke people inside who don't understand it. So it's a bit of both. I've done legal work quite a lot, but now I'm trying to do more advocacy work as well. Because if the people don't know and understand what we're trying to do, implementation will always be a problem. And given poverty, given lack of education, given a lack of a lot of things. For people to understand animal rights is really, really hard because that was me 10 years ago. But I understood because I felt that a mercy should be extended to everybody. And that's how life unfolded.
Yeah, wonderful. I wonder if you talk at all or teach at all about the human suffering in factory farms, so the low income
Absolutely.
status, social ostracization, and the working conditions. I mean, it's not great for the humans that are, I want to say, forced to work in there because people need to put food on the table, right? So it's not, I don't think it's
Yes.
a choice career somebody would go into. So I mean, it's not good for people either at the um, employee level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I personally believe that, all kind of violence stems from suffering of the mind. And if it's a kind person who is mentally happy, he would never, try to harm animals in any capacity. But before going that, he would not try to harm other human beings in that similar capacity. So even before going to factory farming, which is a bit harder to argue, I started with cats and dogs because that's kind of like our major issue at the point. And what I say to them is that the people who are, asked to kill these dogs, they're going through immense mental suffering as well. They're suffering and they're victims. And when they go through this process, they're dehumanizing themselves. And eventually, this dehumanization extends to people living in their family. And as we all know, there's a direct link between domestic violence and animal cruelty. So I always try to bring that to the surface. And very recently, a couple of years ago, the UN, for example, in their one of the general comments for the Convention on the Rights of Child, they also said that children should not be exposed to animal cruelty in any capacity. So we start there because that's kind of like an easy argument. And then we talk about factory farming or food systems that people living there are going through a form of environmental racism because all the pollution, everything that's going to affect them is going to lead to a lot of diseases. And most of these people cannot afford the medical treatment. So you need to think about that. And of course, within the slaughterhouse, we argue a similar concept of mental suffering of the mind there as well, because they're dehumanizing them and they don't even understand what's really happening. So it's all of those concepts, and we need to use all of those concepts because children rights are directly connected to this. Women rights are connected to this. Um, Rights of everybody is kind of like connected to these kind of things. So it has to be a holistic perspective. And as I mentioned before, in many situations, animal rights people forget to think about humans, which is not correct. And the environment as well. And the same thing happens in those spectrums as well. So we really need to come together and combine these arguments for collective benefit of everybody.
Well, as you say, we're all connected, aren't we? And it seems to me you've got some a touch of post-human a view on post-humanism. Do you use post-humanism as a framing in your work? Because you talk about the interconnectedness and we know that well, everything relies on everything else and has some knock-on effect.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, how I understand post-humanism is often I try to relate that every harm that we literally have on this planet is human-driven. But if we can have the ability to harm, we also have the ability to improve everything, which is kind of a responsibility. And when we go from a purely human perspective to interspecies justice, I've skipped one step within it, which is One Health, which is something, a term that all of us use. But the problem with One Health is that it only talks about an intersection of a connection between human, animal, and environmental health. It stops there. But when you don't include justice in there, you're basically giving everybody the possibility that whenever they try to work on this equation, the balancing is always towards the human side of things, which is also incorrect. So when you insert justice inside of it, you have to think about everybody's right. So if I say to somebody, go vegan, I also have to understand how will he feed himself after, whether he has the resources, whether he has the money, how he can transition. So that thing has to come together as well. But whenever a person is eating animals, I would then bring in the animal side of things there as well. It's really hard to exercise justice in this capacity, but all of these things have to come together before we can actually exercise justice. Because without justice, we will not have a planet where everybody is thriving.
I have a question for you about the personal responsibility aspect of things. One of the things that kept standing out when I was reading your papers was that both in Pakistan and in the US and other places, when there is a natural disaster, the people who are helping in those situations are usually NGOs or government agencies. They're the ones that end up doing the rescues, which means there's an additional strain on already limited resources. And there's a risk of sort of other people's lives, right? Outside people coming in to rescue. How do we sort of transition that? How do we get people to start taking personal responsibility for the area and getting involved in these rescues as you've personally done? What is the inspiration that we can use for people?
I mean, I think firstly we have to break down how disasters happen, because a lot of people only focus on when the disaster has happened. That's the part when everybody sees, it's right there and the animal is suffering. And that's the part that's actually, unfortunately, the most glamorized part as well, because it leads to something that I cynically call political or charitable saviorism, because that's what's really happening. You're not ever going to be able to create that same situation or the same home where the animal or the person came from, which is one of the cardinal principles of TNVR. When we do it with cats, CNVR, cats and dogs, about the returning back to home part, it actually has to be the same home. That's no longer possible. And you're basically wasting resources on not fixing the problem, because fixing the problem would be to prevent the disasters. That's where everybody has to take responsibility, where anticipatory action can be taken to prevent the harm of the disaster itself. And that is where we can insert conversations about limiting our climate change footprint, which is massive in the food system, particularly factory farming, and associate with every other concept. So, I mean, this is actually true, and I'm not misquoting, but right now there's a flood going on in my country, and we're doing exactly what we did in 2022. We recently have finished our human rescue projects, and we have just received data about the animal deaths that have happened in the floods, which is touching around 5,000 animals. And we have created a program where we will go in and provide emergency veterinary aid again and food to those animals, because the floods are ongoing. And the reason for doing that is for people to understand that in addition to humans, animals are also victims of these disasters and floods. But it is not a good measure, in my opinion. It's just knee-jerk because you're not trying to fix the problem. And eventually those animals afterwards, we all know where they're going, but that's a different problem. But still, the responsibility on me or anybody else is to prevent it. And for that, when these floods happened, uh, people in the government, and this is why the term natural disaster doesn't slip from our minds. It's purposefully taught because in essence there's no such disaster that is natural. It is human driven, it is man-made, and it is a global carbon footprint or environmental footprint which is leading to these things. And when you add the term natural to it, the government can basically say it's not my responsibility, it's natural, it's an act of God, and therefore I cannot fix it. So the first step would be to letting that go. So then people can understand, yes, you can fix it. That's when they will start to take action. So people can change this terminology, and people really need to work on preparedness and mitigation versus response, because when the response is happening, they will not be able to do the proper response, because it's just almost impossible to recreate the same situation that they had before. And in many situations, they may have to leave their animals behind, not because they want to, but because they just cannot. And that's life and death for a lot of people who love their animals. They would, stay and die with them, which is noble and which is amazing. But these situations have to be avoided when it comes to disasters.
Well, and I think that goes back to your comment about environmental justice too, because the places that these not so natural disasters are happening, they're hitting marginalized communities of humans and animals more in the areas where people are least able to bounce back from these, less resilient in these areas. So I think you're talking about focusing on the needs of the responsibility that the rest of the world, the rest of the population has for these
No, even
areas.
ourselves.
Yes.
How can we reduce our environmental footprint? It's not that hard. I mean, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do it every day, but maybe do it one day. It will all accumulate up. And when you develop that thinking that justice, is for everybody and that includes the environment, you are one step closer towards actually, realizing true justice. And that's different for everybody. And in many disasters which are happening across the world, we have to acknowledge as animal rights people that the humans are suffering in immense measures, and maybe it's beyond their traumatic faculties to think about animals. We can't blame them. We have to blame who caused the disasters, and we have to fight them, because that's the only way forward. And we all know why these disasters are happening. We all know who's driving their environmental footprint, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to help people understand what that really is.
Altamush, often when I'm flicking through my social media, your name pops up, and I was looking at one of your posts fairly recently, about 3 months ago, I think, and I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the eventually sweet story of the Himalayan brown bear that you managed to rescue.
Yeah, that story is actually ongoing, but initially we were able to file a petition to move that bear to a sanctuary because it was originally in a zoo. As the story started in 2016, 2017, it was rescued from a juggler, which is a very common practice that happens with bears. Using hot plates and putting something in their nose, and it's just horrible, taking their teeth away and the claws away because to ensure that they don't harm the human being. It's just commodifying them in the worst way possible. So while at that point when we intervened, the bear was already at the zoo, but he was not being taken care of properly, which is why he was suffering, and a video resurfaced. So we went in to get information and data, and we filed a petition that the zoo needs to be moved, otherwise it would die. And we did get an order, a court order that we should move this to a particular sanctuary. And while that was a major victory, the sanctuary did not have the capacity to take the bear because of the temperature problems, and we should have realized that. But the sanctuary was unfortunately located in an area because of climate change and other reasons in a very, very hot area, and an Himalayan bear cannot go there. As a lawyer, I had already won the case, and it was in my benefit that I should have let the bear go to that sanctuary. But as an animal rights person, I could not let that happen. So we filed another petition, another application in the same case that the bear needs to be moved to an alternative sanctuary, and we identified it. Unfortunately, because of the legal system of how it happens in Pakistan, which is very unpredictable, we were not able to get a court date. And while in the interim, the bear was moved to a zoo, but in a very cooler space, which we are monitoring. We are filing another application actually this week. I'm supposed to write it after this interview ends, and ask for the bear to be moved to the alternative sanctuary. And we're very, very hopeful that we will get a good decision, and this case will eventually end.
And what's the bear's name?
Oh, he didn't have a name, but I named him Hope.
Oh, th- that's great. I mean, you do so much, and every time, as I say, every time I've turned on my social media, there's Altamush. He's achieving something else, doing something else, moving another mountain 3 foot to the left, all the time. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing your journey and your insights with us today. Just one small final question. What one small action could our listeners take this week to help animals in their own communities?
Depends on which community that they live in. If they have any interaction with a particular animal, if their law allows, they can feed them. or if it's possible, they can talk to another person about animals having feelings. That's very basic, because that's how ideas spread and that's how grassroots change happen. And maybe they can follow us and, see if they need advice on what they can do. There's literally a lot of things that all of us can do in our different capacities. We all just need to realize one thing, that we're all capable of good, and the way we do good will be very, very different. So we don't have to compare ourselves with other. We just have to do some good every day, every moment. It's gonna help everybody, including ourselves. And maybe, just maybe, we can try to see the world differently. It's not that hard, but we should try. And sometimes, and many times, we will fail. That's okay. But we should keep trying, because that's the only way to have hope, and generally feel that, this world could be better for everybody. And we must not let that hope die.
Well, we will definitely be putting all your references and your contacts, how people can contact you in the podcast notes. So yes, absolutely. Anybody wants to reach out to Altamush, then please do, and I'm sure he'll definitely help you go on whatever path it is that is helping animals and communities. Thank you very much, Altamush. Really appreciate you joining us today. It's been absolutely fascinating insight, and I don't know how you do so much. It's incredible. It's really impressive. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Anthrozoology podcast, and join us next time for more fascinating insights into the world of anthrozoology.